I'm Melissa Jenner, and I co-founded two companies, StartNow and Actualize, and they're both in the business of helping people change careers. I came to Queenstown, moved to Queenstown, actually bought a house in Arthur's Point, and met with the lovely gents from the council and said, can I be of any use to you guys? And I know that Queenstown's under huge pressure right now. There's a lot of people either out of work, thinking of changing their jobs, maybe have to change their jobs. And so, given this is my career and my profession, I'm here to help anyone in Queenstown who wants some help. And we've just launched an online platform, actually, which is what I've given you some discount on the chairs there. But listen, before we get started, I thought it'd be great if you guys just got to know each other a little bit, because we are going to be spending some time later today doing some activities. So maybe turn to someone that you don't know. I know some of you came in together, but turn to someone that you don't know, switch chairs, and what I want you guys to do is have a conversation about something that you've got in common, okay? Find a common ground with someone that you don't know, go and say hello, and just get them to talk about where they're from and see if you guys can find a connection. Maybe you know someone, maybe you went to the same school, maybe you work at the same place, maybe you're out of work for the same reason. Have a little chat, and let's just get to know each other a little bit better, okay? Give that a few minutes. Okay. How'd you guys go? Looks like everyone found someone, which is cool. So thanks for doing that, guys. What did you guys have in common? What did you guys find out about each other? I don't want to pick on anyone, but how about you two?
We both worked in a reservations department before we lost our jobs. Yeah. No.
Yeah. Okay, what else? What else have you got? Who else found something in common with their neighbour?
We both work in the same industry, or worked in the same industry.
What industry is that, guys?
Hospitality and
Okay.
tourism. Yeah.
Yeah. How many people in here are from hospo? Okay, about a quarter, maybe a fifth. Okay. What else did you guys have in common? Anyone from the back here?
We came out of the gym here. We've never seen each other.
Go to the same gym? Oh, cool. Awesome. You guys both drive to that long way, or is it in the same neighbourhood? Okay. What else? What about you guys over here?
We've both been in Vietnam for 5 years.
Okay, whereabouts are you from?
UK originally.
Oh, okay, cool. You've both been here 5 years. Well, you're basically New Zealanders now. So, here, Kaha. Okay, guys, so that is the first lesson that you just learned. And that is that we all live in a small community here in Queenstown, but whether you live in a small community or a large city, connecting with people and communicating with people that you don't know is the first way to activate a new career for yourself. Because if there's anything I've learned, it's that people hire people they know, they like, and they trust. So building rapport with people that you don't know is the first art of activating a new career. And the more that you can do that, just have the confidence to bump into someone and strike up a conversation and find a connection, I tell you what, that is going to get you so much further than any recruiter. Okay, so in New Zealand, whether you live in Auckland, Queenstown, Christchurch, Hamilton, Sydney, New York or Singapore, that is a common kind of art and skill that you need to develop. So let's crack on to what we want to talk about today. Today we're going to do 3 things. I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story and how I got to be here, because I've been through a lot of change and I've changed careers many times. I want to talk a little bit about that. Then I'm going to talk to you about mindset, and mindset is everything. Because without the right mindset, if you're trying to make a change in your career, it's almost as hard as leaving a bad marriage, changing your career. It's, in my opinion, one of the hardest things that you can do, because you've got the safety and the security of what you've been doing. Possibly you've been trained in it for a long time, and your mindset is key to changing careers. So we're going to talk a little bit about mindset, but we're also going to talk about action. Because with the right mindset, if you don't take action, nothing will change. And what we're going to talk about today is how do you make changing your career a bit of a project and put it to work. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to do some activities. So we've got 4 tables set out here. I'm going to take you through quite a few tools, but I'm going to give you 4 to work on today in small groups, okay? So that's how we're going to roll. And to kick things off, I put this quote, I found this quote, which I absolutely love, from a guy who's a lot older than most of us in the room. And this is really, I think, quite critical also, as well as this whole art of finding a connection with people, is this idea that if you are going to activate a new career, don't keep holding on to the past. Okay, for the hundreds of people that I've worked with, if you can let go of and put to bed and almost kind of shut the door on the pain and the hurt if you've been made redundant, or if you've lost your job, or if that industry is being closed to you, you have to get to a point where you say, I'm ready to move forward. And activation is all about positive forward-moving energy. So that's kind of a good place to kick off and start. And I would say, for me, action is a great salve to anxiety. And that's one thing I've noticed with the people that I work with, is the more you can take action, the anxiety and the emotion of losing your job or having to change kind of goes away. One thing I would say is, if you want to take any pictures of any of these, you're welcome to. We're not going to be putting this presentation out, but you are welcome to take pictures and also to take notes. So this is also my kind of philosophy in life, really. From change comes a chance and an opportunity for you to find something new. And I know when you first lose your job, or when you get made redundant, I've been made redundant 3 times in my life, and I've fired myself from my own job, which I'll tell you about in a second. But at every time you can get past that anger, every time you can get past that hurt, you get to the point where you can create a chance for yourself. And so that's kind of, again, another mindset thing that I would sort of want to encourage you to start off with as you go on this journey. Before I carry on, how many people in the room have been laid off and are out of work? If you don't mind sharing. Okay, so about a third. How many people are in a current job but thinking about possibly changing or leaving? or worried about it? Okay, a few people. And the rest of you are in jobs and you were here just to learn something, I'm assuming, which is cool, because we never know when change is coming. And I say to people, everybody who's got a full-time job is only 30 days away from potentially having to reactivate themselves. Because in employment law, you know, companies these days don't have to give you much more notice than about 30 days notice. And very rarely do you get more than that. So if you are in the room and you're feeling safe and secure, hopefully there's something in here for you too, because you never know when you're going to need to take that chance from the change that you're given. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about my story. I think that's the next slide. I actually have a career that spanned nearly 25 years, and I grew up in a reasonably poor to middle class family in South Auckland. And when I started out in my career, I wanted to be a teacher. And so I went to university in Auckland, and I started down that pathway for about 2 years, and then I discovered work. And I never looked back. And my journey towards being a teacher has actually come full circle, because in the work that I do now, in my 2 businesses, I'm actually kind of teaching, coaching, and activating people. But the journey that I went on to discover how teaching would work for me was a pretty fractured one. So, and the change and the activation that I've created in my life has all come from my own funding and my own energy and my own effort. And I've had no handouts along the way, and I think that that's part of my story to you, and that's part of my what I want to share with you today, is that some of these things on the screen here have been quite massive changes and disruptive things that have happened in my career. And from those, what you could, some of them, classify as, particularly the one on the top right there, I worked in those buildings in New York on that day, and I was there when the building got hit by a plane. So that is a very disruptive, my office was on the top floor of the right-hand tower, 105th floor. Now, that's a change to my work life that I could never have foreseen, and everybody in that building couldn't have foreseen. And I had to turn that into a chance of positivity for myself. Just like for the people in the room who are out of work, I bet you didn't see it coming. I bet no one saw COVID coming. I bet none of us in the room who are business owners or anyone listening on video, none of us saw this coming. Nobody saw that coming in New York. And when these things happen to us, they're highly disruptive, and all you've got is your own energy, your own mindset, and the action that you take. Middle centre square was when I worked in London through the GFC. And I had to lay off 100 people, and then I got laid off. So, you know, working in an environment in a bank when everybody around you literally showing up to work one day, people aren't there anymore, and there's empty desks. I'm sure some of you have been through that or are going through it. It's very traumatizing. It is a trauma, and some of you might still be feeling a little bit traumatized from what's happened to you. But what you have to do is, it's a change that's happened to you, and you have to turn it into a chance. Bottom right is when I launched my business StartNow, and I did that because I'd fired myself from my own job. I'll tell you why. I had a clash of values. And for some of you in the room or on the video, that might be where you feel yourself getting to, particularly as we get older in life. I had a great job where I'd been to Stanford Design School. You learned human-centered design. I had the dream job. I was a director at NZTE. I was getting paid a high salary. I thought I'd come back from London, from the GFC in London, to have this great job in New Zealand, and I literally could not work for the organisation that I was working for because I had a clash of values with the people around me. And no matter, and that's no slur on the organisation, it's no slur on those people. It's just that for me, I didn't enjoy that environment anymore. So I quit my job and started my own business. That was 8 years ago, with almost nothing in the bank. And so these things that happen to us or that we bring upon ourselves, all I can say to you is try to turn it into a chance and a positive opportunity for yourself. So that's kind of my journey. My first job, by the way, out of university, top left, I worked for a stockbroker. This is in the late 80s. I mean, imagine giving up, you know, a very comfy university life to become a school teacher, to go and work for a stockbroker in the late 80s. So yeah, trials and tribulations seem to follow me around, and that's probably why I'm here today, is because I've learnt to adapt and evolve. So that's just a little bit of my story, but we're not here to talk about me, so let's carry on. Oh yeah, this is kind of another one. I love sayings unless you can't tell already. This is another great one. Life is like riding a bicycle. In order to keep your balance, you need to keep moving. And The reason why I put that up there is because if I look back over my life, and hopefully you will in 10 or 15 years, you know, that you've only really got yourself and your own energy to propel yourself forward and to stay on balance. So the fact that you're here today is a really positive sign that you are investing in kind of keeping yourself on balance. So I applaud you for being here. So this is a really interesting time to be either out of work or thinking about changing your job. I believe the future is not just bright, it's about a rainbow, because there is so much happening right now in work and in the workforce and in opportunities, and I'm always glass half full, right? I know people who are out of work is probably like, damn it, I wish I still had that sort of safe job. But what I'd like to say to you and propose to you is that right now there's never been a better time in life to recreate the way you're working. I'm going to show you a video in a minute from a wonderful woman, Emily Wapnick, who talks about, you know, not having one true calling. But before I show you that, you know, here's a few big thematics that are happening in the work market right now, which are all truisms and are all fact-based. So the displacement of the full-time employee. Full-time employees are on the down. More and more companies now are moving to contract workers, agile workforces, roaming teams, so they're hiring people to work on contracts, they're hiring people to collaborate with other companies. So full-time employment is actually on the decline, and a lot of companies are no longer looking to hire people into full-time roles. So if you've got a full-time role and you think that that's going to last for the rest of your career, I would say start thinking about other ways of working, because it might not be true in 10 years' time. Agile workers, contract workers, people working from home, global workers running portfolios of work from New Zealand. So I have some friends who work in San Francisco, they work in Hong Kong, they work in London, but they do it from a New Zealand base. So they're a New Zealand-based global employee of their own company. And portfolio working is a new big kind of trend. Democratized learning, what does that mean? Basically now you don't have to go to a university to learn. There's all kinds of micro courses that you can do online, quite cheap. So the democratization of learning is happening, and there's a fantastic, if anyone's interested in learning about technology, there's a fantastic program out of Auckland by the Tech Futures Lab, which I'm a coach at, and the Tech Futures Lab does most of their courses now online, and you can enroll and subscribe to learn about things like AI and machine-based learning, and all of these things are done in sort of micro workshops and short courses. So there's a lot of ways to learn now that's beyond just going to university and full-time learning. Apprenticeships and so the government's announced a lot around apprenticeships, and low-interest startup funding is everywhere. So if you're looking at starting a business, there's never been a better time to do it. And also this emergence of a multi-potentialite. I'm just going to play you this video, and this is really, I found really inspiring. It's a story about how do you move away from, for the people in the room that have been in hospo, maybe you can continue to be in hospo, but do 2 or 3 other things as well. And that's the start of kind of portfolio-based working. So let's just play this. Hopefully this will all work, and then we'll have a bit of a chat.
Raise your hand if you've ever been asked the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? Now, if you had to guess, how old would you say you were when you were first asked this question? You can just hold up fingers. 3, 5, 3, 5, 5. Okay. Now, raise your hand if the question, what do you want to be when you grow up, has ever caused you any anxiety? Any anxiety at all? I'm someone who's never been able to answer the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? See, the problem wasn't that I didn't have any interests, it's that I had too many. In high school, I liked English and math and art, and I built websites, and I played guitar in a punk band called Frustrated Telephone Operator. Maybe you've heard of us. This continued after high school, and at a certain point, I began to notice this pattern in myself, where I would become interested in an area, and I would dive in and become all-consumed, and I get to be pretty good at whatever it was. And then I would hit this point where I'd start to get bored. And usually I would try and persist anyway, because I had already devoted so much time and energy, and sometimes money, into this field. But eventually, this sense of boredom, this feeling of yeah, I got this. This isn't challenging anymore. It would get to be too much, and I would have to let it go. But then I would become interested in something else, something totally unrelated, and I would dive into that and become all consumed, and I'd be like, yes, I found my thing. And then I would hit this point again, where I'd start to get bored. And eventually, I would let it go. But then I would discover something new and totally different, and I would dive into that. This pattern caused me a lot of anxiety for 2 reasons. The first was that I wasn't sure how I was going to turn any of this into a career. I thought that I would eventually have to pick one thing, deny all of my other passions, and just resign myself to being bored. The other reason it caused me so much anxiety was a little bit more personal. I worried that there was something wrong with this, and something wrong with me for being unable to stick with anything. I worried that I was afraid of commitment, or that I was scattered, or that I was self-sabotaging, afraid of my own success. If you can relate to my story and to these feelings, I'd like you to ask yourself a question that I wish I had asked myself back then. Ask yourself where you learned to assign the meaning of wrong or abnormal to doing many things. I'll tell you where you learned it. You learned it from the culture. We are first asked the question, what do you want to be when you grow up, when we're about 5 years old? And the truth is that no one really cares what you say when you're that age. It's considered an innocuous question posed to little kids to elicit cute replies, like, I want to be an astronaut, or I want to be a ballerina, or I want to be a pirate. Insert Halloween costume here. But this question gets asked of us again and again as we get older in various forms. For instance, high school students might get asked what major they're going to pick in college. And at some point, what do you want to be when you grow up goes from being the cute exercise it once was to the thing that keeps us up at night. Why? See, while this question inspires kids to dream about what they could be, it does not inspire them to dream about all that they could be. In fact, it does just the opposite. Because when someone asks you what you want to be, you can't reply with 20 different things. The well-meaning adult will likely chuckle and be like, oh, how cute, but you can't be a violin maker and a psychologist. You have to choose. This is Dr. Bob Childs. And he's a luthier and a psychotherapist. And this is Amy Ung, a magazine editor turned illustrator, entrepreneur, teacher, and creative director. But most kids don't hear about people like this. All they hear is that they're going to have to choose. But it's more than that. The notion of the narrowly focused life is highly romanticized in our culture. It's this idea of destiny, or the one true calling. The idea that we each have one great thing we are meant to do during our time on this earth, and you need to figure out what that thing is and devote your life to it. But what if you're someone who isn't wired this way? What if there are a lot of different subjects that you're curious about and many different things you want to do? Well, there is no room for someone like you in this framework. And so you might feel alone. You might feel like you don't have a purpose. And you might feel like there's something wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you. What you are is a multi-potentialite. A multi-potentialite is someone with many interests and creative pursuits. It's a mouthful to say. It might help if you break it up into 3 parts: multi-potential and ite. You can also use one of the other terms that connote the same idea, such as the polymath, the Renaissance person. Actually, during the Renaissance period, it was considered the ideal to be well-versed in multiple disciplines. Barbara Scher refers to us as scanners. Use whichever term you like or invent your own. I have to say I find it sort of fitting that as a community we cannot agree on a single identity. It's easy to see your multipotentiality as a limitation or an affliction that you need to overcome. But what I've learned through speaking with people and writing about these ideas on my website is that there are some tremendous strengths to being this way. Here are 3 multipotentialite superpowers. 1, idea synthesis. That is combining 2 or more fields and creating something new at the intersection. Shaw Wong and Rachel Binks drew from their shared interests in cartography, data visualization, travel, mathematics, and design when they founded Meshu. Meshu is a company that creates custom, geographically inspired jewelry. Shaw and Rachel came up with this unique idea, not despite, but because of their eclectic mix of skills and experiences. Innovation happens at the intersections. That's where the new ideas come from. And multipotentialites, with all of their backgrounds, are able to access a lot of these points of intersection. The second multipotentialite superpower is rapid learning. When multipotentialites become interested in something, we go hard. We absorb everything we can get our hands on. We're also used to being beginners because we've been beginners so many times in the past. And this means that we're less afraid of trying new things and stepping out of our comfort zones. What's more, many skills are transferable across disciplines, and we bring everything we've learned to every new area we pursue, so we're rarely starting from scratch. Nora Dunn is a full-time traveler and freelance writer. As a child concert pianist, she honed an incredible ability to develop muscle memory. Now she's the fastest typist she knows. Before becoming a writer, Nora was a financial planner. She had to learn the finer mechanics of sales when she was starting her practice, and this skill now helps her write compelling pitches to editors. It is rarely a waste of time to pursue something you're drawn to, even if you end up quitting. You might apply that knowledge in a different field entirely, in a way that you couldn't have anticipated. The third multipotentialite superpower is adaptability. That is the ability to morph into whatever you need to be in a given situation. Abe Cahuto is sometimes a video director, sometimes a web designer, sometimes a Kickstarter consultant, sometimes a teacher, and sometimes apparently James Bond. He's valuable because he does good work. He's even more valuable because he can take on various roles depending on his client's needs. Fast Company magazine identified adaptability as the single most important skill to develop in order to thrive in the 21st century. The economic world is changing so quickly and unpredictably that it is the individuals and organizations that can pivot in order to meet the needs of the market that are really going to thrive. Idea synthesis, rapid learning, and adaptability. 3 skills that multipotentialites are very adept at, and 3 skills that they might lose if pressured to narrow their focus. As a society, we have a vested interest in encouraging multipotentialites to be themselves. We have a lot of complex, multidimensional problems in the world right now, and we need creative, out-of-the-box thinkers to tackle them. Now, let's say that you are, in your heart, a specialist. You came out of the womb knowing you wanted to be a pediatric neurosurgeon. Don't worry, there's nothing wrong with you either. In fact, some of the best teams are comprised of a specialist and multipotentialite paired together. The specialist can dive in deep and implement ideas, while the multipotentialite brings their breadth of knowledge to the project. It's a beautiful partnership. But we should all be designing lives and careers that are aligned with how we're wired. And sadly, multipotentialites are largely being encouraged simply to be more like their specialist peers. So with that said, If there is one thing you take away from this talk, I hope that it is this. Embrace your inner wiring, whatever that may be. If you're a specialist at heart, then by all means specialize. That is where you'll do your best work. But to the multi-potentialites in the room, including those of you who may have just realized in the last 12 minutes that you are one, to you I say, embrace your many passions. Follow your curiosity down those rabbit holes. Explore your intersections. Embracing our inner wiring leads to a happier, more authentic life. And perhaps more importantly, multi-potentialites. The world needs us. Thank you.
Well, does anyone resonate with this idea of being a multi-potentialite? How many people in the room kind of get that? Wow, this is a creative group. Yeah, so I talk to a lot of people in my work about, does my passion have to be my work? And I say maybe, not necessarily, right? And this philosophy is about you can do multiple things all at once, and you can run many railway tracks all along at the same time and create kind of music in your career like that. So what did you guys, let's have a quick discussion. What did you guys take from that? Who learned something? Who kind of took something away from that kind of meant something to them? Or maybe you didn't agree with it. Maybe there was something in there that you didn't like or you want to challenge. How many people, this has had like over 2 million views, I think, on TED. So I'd be interested to know what you guys thought of it as a concept. Any thoughts? Okay. Isn't that interesting? Because I definitely grew up with that, that pressure to be one thing. And those pictures that I showed you before, I've kind of skipped around the world and done 5 or 6 different jobs, 3 or 4 different countries, trying to figure out, and funnily enough, came back to some kind of teaching, but not what I thought it would be. But I think you're absolutely right. Like, if we can embrace this with young people and not teach people that they have to be one thing, it'll change the pressure on them. Because as soon as you become binary about your choices, you load all your cards on one thing working out, as opposed to spreading it across like a, working the table at a blackgammon, I was going to say, in a casino. Spreading your chips around. Like, how do you spread your risk? Yeah. Anybody else want to comment on what they took from that? Hey.
Something my mum actually said a few years ago, who's obviously older than me. She said, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. What I want to do when I grow up. So you just think, oh, like, trying different things.
Yeah. Did she see that as a positive, or did she see that as a negative, do you think? How was she interpreting that when she's...
Bit of both. I mean, her era, they didn't always study, they worked and then they had kids, so they didn't work, and then they just did whatever. It's probably different to now, but she also did a variety of different jobs and learned lots of different skills.
And options were a lot more limited then too, probably, right? Yeah. Anybody else want to comment? So for me, I got a couple of things out of that when I first watched it, and every time I see it, I get something different. But the first was this idea she talked about synthesizing more than one thing together and looking for the cross intersection. You don't have to do that with somebody else, but there might be somebody in this room who has some shared interest with you, or some really interesting way that you could synthesize your skills, or someone you know in your business or your community. I love that idea. At the intersect of 2 kind of complementary ideas comes innovation. That was the first thing that I like, and I love encouraging that in the people that I work with. How can you find someone to partner with your thinking? Because it's really hard to go out on your own if you're thinking about setting up something. But also, how do you in your own personal life and your career think about combining what you've been doing before with something new to lead somewhere else? And that was the second thing that I really liked out of this story, is nothing that you do is ever a mistake. It's just a stepping stone on a path. And I talk a lot to people about, people are really good at joining jobs and starting jobs, but they're not very good at leaving. And I'm actually a real advocate for leaving. I'm a real advocate for letting go of something and going into an organisation and learning something, getting it and then leaving, and getting good at that kind of hopscotching between jobs. Because the more change that you do, the less attached you become to something, and the more that you hold on to it, hoping it's going to give you everything. So those are a couple of things that I took from that. Okay, what have we done here? Let me just go back to my presentation. How about I stop that first? That would be useful, wouldn't it? Okay, let's get on to, I've got two parts to this conversation and then we're going to do some work together. The first is mindset. And as I said to you before, mindset is absolutely critical to what you're trying to do, because how you think absolutely influences what you believe about your future, what you believe about your potential, the narrative that you tell yourself. So starting with thinking, starting with thought, pausing, discovering things about yourself, unpacking your skills, unpacking your needs. These are some of the tools we're going to talk about today. But really pausing and thinking. If you're out of work, don't panic. Spend some time in this kind of thoughtfulness and figuring out what you believe about your potential opportunity, what you believe about yourself, what you believe about the market that you're in, what you believe about the people around you and how you might partner with people. Before you act, okay? So mindset is a huge driver. And for anybody who's feeling pressured or under stress having lost your job, once you turn this opportunity that you've been given into a process, the emotion goes out of it. So one of the things that I really believe in is a good process. And if you can turn this situation that you're in into a project and put it into a work plan, that's what I'm going to talk about after mindset, is how do you activate this and how do you create a work plan for yourself. Your anxiety goes away because you are creating an exit strategy out of the situation you're in. And we've all heard the story of the frog in the pot, right? The frog that sits in a pot that's in slow boil doesn't notice that he's getting hotter and hotter, right? Because he can't feel the water changing, right? So what I want you guys to do is not to be the frog in the pot and just sit there and not move. I want you to pause, think, reflect, change the way you believe about things about yourself and your future opportunity, and create an action plan. But it all starts with mindset. So I've got 5 mindset points here. Now, for some of you guys, this might feel a bit woo-woo. It might feel a little bit like I've heard all this before, but you're here for a reason, right? You're here because you're trying to change something in your life. So of these 5 mindset things, I want you guys to choose one, just one that resonates with you, okay? And we're going to have a little chat at the end about which ones of these 5 you felt is most important and most valuable for you right now, okay? Even if it's kind of semi-helpful, just choose one that you think for you right now, it kind of speaks to you and you think you can use it. Now, I'm also a book collector, and all of these have got examples of books, okay, with them. So any of these books I would highly recommend reading and buying or getting out of the library or reading online, because they're all fantastic and can change your life. So number 1, have courage. So what is courage? What is courage? What does it mean to have courage? I've put up on this screen here a list of things that I've defined as being courageous, which might surprise you. And there's some conflicts in there, right? Having the courage to say no. Having the courage to say, no, I'm not going to go and be a fruit picker. Actually, I'm more qualified than that. I'm going to wait. I'm going to be patient. Or I'm in a really unsatisfactory job right now, but you know what? This is not the time to leave, because this is not the time to give up my security and not be able to pay my rent. So I'm going to stay the course. I'm going to have the courage to stay the course. Okay? So courage comes in many guises. Some people think that courage is just the first thing up there, believing in the unbelievable, which it is. Absolutely. When I fired myself from my own job, I believed I was able to set up a business and make money. I had nothing in the bank. No safety net. I sat on the beach for about a month and thought, what have I just done? Right? But I believed in the unbelievable. Some people believe it's the bottom one. Just trying stuff is what courage is. And it is that as well. But it's all these other things, right? It's showing emotion and listening to your emotion. Some of the most courageous people I know, and if you know Brené Brown, for those of you who follow her, she shows a lot of emotion. She's got a great podcast with Russell Brand. If you haven't listened to it, it is funny and fascinating. And she talks very emotionally, and we're taught in life, a little bit like Emily was saying before, about, we're taught to just be one thing. We're also taught not to show emotion. I call BS on that, because emotion, the think, believe, act, emotion is trying to tell us something. We're either feeling uncomfortable or uncomfortable, we're feeling anxious, we're feeling fearful. Listen to it, it's your instinct telling you. Listen to your emotion, don't be afraid to show emotion. All of these things are about being courageous, take an unpopular stand. You know, I had to take an unpopular stand and leave a team. I had to take an unpopular stand when I had to fire people. I had to show courage. I was asked to do things sometimes I didn't want to do, but they kept me safe at the time. So I would say for me, people often say to me, you know, you have a lot of courage. And so I tried to think about, what does that mean? How can you put courage into action? And so there's just a bunch of stuff that kind of works for me. So being courageous, if you're trying to change careers, you've got to have courage. You've got to back yourself, okay? That's the first mindset lesson. Number 2 is this idea of beyond resilience, is this idea called being anti-fragile. Has anyone heard of this theory? Anyone heard of this guy? He's the guy that wrote The Black Swan, Nicholas Taleb. It's a book called Anti-Fragile. The Black Swan's also really interesting, by the way, about unprecedented events that no one sees coming. We've all been living through one of those. So if you look at that graph there, what happens to people when stress and change happens is fragile people break. Okay, and I meet these people every day. These are the people who I can't help them because they have allowed what's happened to them to break them. These are the people who can't get out from under their duvets. These are the people who believe that they've been hurt and it's that person's fault. And, you know, poor me, right? They're broken. They're not going to be able to gain or benefit from what's happened to them. The next group of people are pretty robust, and for a while there, you know, nothing happens, but after a while they don't change. So if you're robust, you are angry at what's happened to you, and you're going to keep trying to keep it the same, okay? Then you've got people who are resilient, and for a little bit longer, they gain, but eventually resilient people are still trying to hold on to the past. Remember that first saying I put up about Socrates and not holding on to the past and investing in the new? It's like beyond resilience is innovation, is where we say, when something is disruptive and distressing, I'm going to make good out of it. I am going to turn this into something positive. And that's what Emily was talking about as well, about how do you smash what you've been doing together with another passion or another opportunity that you hadn't considered before and go to the mindset of innovation. So the more you hold on to the past, you're probably going to stay where you are for a while, but at some point it's going to cost you. So, you know, it's for some of you, staying in Queenstown is possibly, you're making a stand, you're being robust, right? You don't want to change, right? For some of you, it may be that you need to leave Queenstown. For some of you, you might need to leave the job that you're doing. For some of you, you might need to stay where you are and turn it into something new. Negotiate with your employer. Stay where you are and turn it into something positive, okay? Because right now, that might be the best opportunity for you to innovate in your life. So that's number 2. Don't just be resilient, try to be anti-fragile. What that means is turn what's happening to you into a positive. Be open to change. Number 3, has anyone heard of this beautiful book by a woman called Carol Dweck from Stanford? She wrote a book about mindset, which is what we're talking about. It's called Mindset, but it's actually about, she did the study of people. This is the IQ, EQ argument. She did a study of children, actually, in high school in the US. And those who had a fixed mindset believed that their IQ was capped. Their ability to learn, their ability to do things was attached to their intelligence. And that these were the children that were told when they were growing up, kids who are smarter than you will be better at that. Because you're not very good at maths, you won't be able to be a scientist, right? They're children who were told that they weren't smart enough or fast enough or tall enough. Whereas the children who weren't told that, and again, as a parent, you would really relate to this, to the lady in the back, you know, for parents who say, you know, why don't you just try? You know, you don't know if you can until you try. So this is about shifting your mindset from failure is because of the limit of my abilities to failure is an opportunity to grow. So if I try something, if I learn something, I don't believe in win or lose, I believe in win or learn, right? That's my mindset. My mindset is about I can learn to do anything I want. Challenges help me grow. So all of those pictures that I had up on the board before of things that have really disrupted my life have actually helped me grow. So if you can switch your mindset away from being, you know, I only learned hospitality in university or Polytech, so that's all I'm good at. Switch your mindset to what else could I try? I was good at that. Maybe I can be good at something else. Maybe I'd be really good at managing properties. Maybe I'd be really good at running a bar, or you're already in hospitality, bad example, driving a taxi, running a cab company, right? If you have that ability to try things and to have a go, that's about a growth or learning mindset. That's a fantastic book. Number 4, get comfortable with Scrappy. This is the idea of prototyping and experimenting. I went to Stanford to become an accredited coach in this philosophy called designing your life, which is how to take a designer's mindset to your life. And what you'll learn about designers is designers love prototyping. What is prototyping? Prototyping is building a low-cost, cheap example of something and seeing if it will work and not worrying if it fails because they figured it out. They figured out it's not going to work. So perfection kills creativity. So if you are thinking about starting something new, have a go. Just try it. Go work in a florist for a week and see if you like it. If you don't like it, it doesn't matter. I once thought I would work really well in non-for-profit, and I went and worked at a charity that I had a lot of respect for, and what I discovered was the systems were rubbish. And what I learned was that I don't like working in companies with bad systems. So I quit. I left because I learned that doesn't work for me. So just try stuff. Don't wait for things to be perfect before you, particularly if you're looking at launching your own business. Don't wait until things are perfect before you try. Just have a go. Designing Your Life, that's another good book. And that should say number 5, sorry. Pursue meaning. There's a whole lot of conversation all the time about, do what you love, find your purpose. And I'm going to give you a tool to define purpose and work in a minute. But this is another great book, beautiful book about the power of meaning, crafting a life that matters. And I'm going to start from the right here and move backwards because this is 4 pillars that she talks about in this book. And the one at the end, I find really, really interesting. What you tell yourself about who you are and all you can be. So storytelling, the narrative that when you show up, like the conversation you just had when you first came in here today, when you show up and someone says, what do you do? What do you say? I'm learning to do something new, actually. I'm changing my life through my work. I'm learning new skills. What is it that you tell people that you do? What do you believe about yourself? What's the narrative and the story and the movie that's running in your head, and how can you change that to be more meaningful? How can you work on things that bring you more energy and joy? And in the Design Your Life book that I showed you earlier, they talk about energy auditing. How do you audit the things that bring you joy? Why not? You've got one precious life. Why not work doing things that you love? You can. It's just all a choice. It's a mindset thing. Number 3, purpose is less about what you want from an organization and more about what you can give. So if you go into, and I'm going to talk about this at the end when I show you a tool for connecting with people, if you go in and say, what can you give me? What are you going to pay me? What are my hours? Versus what if you go in and say, here's what I can offer. I'd like to work for you flexibly because I think it would be better for your organization because, right? I got this opportunity here because I said, I want to show up and help people. I didn't say, will you pay me to show up? I said, I'd like to come here and help people. And that's the mindset, right? Like, what's your purpose? Why am I here? What am I doing this for? Think first about what you can give to an organization as opposed to what you can get. Tell that story first and see what happens. And belonging, a really, really important pillar in finding meaningful work, is work where you're being valued for who you truly are. And this is really important, finding people and cultures that align to your values. And we're going to talk about this next. Because trust me when I tell you, if you're in the wrong place, it's going to hurt. Because I've had to leave companies because I didn't have alignment on values. And you have to be really strong to do that. So it's actually easier to not go there in the first place. So think about what matters to you. Think about where do you feel most belong. It could surprise you, There could be some companies out there or organizations out there where you have that sense of connection and belonging that you'd never thought about before because they have shared values. Okay, so those are the 5 things that I wanted to show you. So what stood out to people? Oh, I thought you were raising your hand. Which one of those 5 resonated with you guys? What did you?
For me, it was the first one.
Yeah? This one? Having courage. Cool.
And also to value yourself highly enough. I think that's what happens to a lot of people in roles is if they don't feel comfortable doing something, they just kind of reduce the value of themselves, whereas actually you have to be, value yourself.
Have the courage to value yourself. I like that. I might add that to my list. Who else? What other numbers did you guys resonated with you? Which one spoke to you? You thought was useful? Number 2? This one, yeah, because it's interesting, isn't it, how, you know, we're kind of taught to stick our toes in and kind of be resilient to something and try not to change it. What did that speak to for you?
Well, I think that we need, I don't know, we are living right now, we are plenty of resource and we have another knowledge and contact with each other, but we need like a new way to do the thing, to try new things. Yeah, yes.
There's a lot of creative people in Queenstown. There's a lot of creative people here. Okay, who else? Don't make me pick on someone. Did you want to go?
The last one.
Oh, you picked number 5, even though I called it number 2? Yeah, cool. Tell us about that.
I'm probably at a different scenario than everyone here. Yeah, I'm probably at a different scenario here than everybody because I'm probably looking at change because I've been a hairdresser, but we've also had a business and actually just sold it 2 weeks before COVID. So I'm in a totally different situation and my children are actually have just left home. So I want to do something creative, but I don't want to work for anybody and I don't want to work any hours and I've got a lot of what I want because it's what I love. So I've got to find something arty, I think. But I just liked a lot of those things in there.
Yeah. Anybody else? What about someone from over here? What about the...
I really like the perfection kills creativity because I think a lot of us tend to just procrastinate or say it's all too hard, thinking or fearing that it's just all going to go in a heap, screaming heap. So just to give it a go.
Give it a go. Be scrappy. And if you're going to start a business, honestly, my businesses that I run, I've probably done 6 or 7 iterations of them. I've kept all the materials that I developed, and I try them and I kill them. I kill them quickly if they don't work. So yeah, just put stuff out there. And we live in a world where people are afraid to share their ideas openly because they're worried someone's going to steal it, right? But you know what? If you're an innovator, you don't have to worry about that because as soon as you share it, you're on to the next thing. So you just, so yes, try stuff, put stuff out there, see what people's response to it is. You know, you're going to try something new. It doesn't matter if it doesn't work because you'll learn something. When you put something out there that's scrappy and not quite finished, say, what is it that I want to learn? What's my assumption I want to test here? Is it that people will reply online? Is it that people will like the color of this product I'm launching? Is it that they'll pay that price? Just try stuff and learn. Test assumptions all the time. Okay, anybody else? Okay, so those are my 5 points on mindset, but that's not enough. So I think mindset's super important, which is why I put it number 1, but I'd say it's probably 49% to 61% action. I would say, yes, you have to have the right mindset, but if you have the right mindset and you don't take action, no mindset is going to save you, okay? So if you're trying to change your life, change your work, you've got to take action. So what I'm going to share with you now is, trust me, this is not going to be as bad as it's going to sound. I'm going to share with you 10 exercises that you can do. And again, I want you guys to just pick one. Think about one. I'm going to do a poll at the end because I'm really interested in which ones you guys thought were the most useful to you. Thinking about where you're at right now, which one of these 10 exercises, and we're going to play around with some of them afterwards, but which one of these 10 exercises is of most value to you right now, okay? Because it's impossible to do 10. I do workshops with people and we do all 10, but it takes about a day, okay? So just pick 1 or 2 out of here, but I'd love to hear, I want to do a little straw poll later on the one that you thought was the most valuable. So these are 10 exercises that you can do to help you activate a new career. So this is a process. So discover, develop, do. So I said before, think, believe, act. Kind of similar, right? So if you're going to change your career, this is the way that we teach people how to do it. So first of all, you've got to discover things about yourself. You've got to do some work on yourself. You've first of all got to think about your needs. Any designer who is designing a product or a service, they start off with what do people need or what do they not even know they need? You know when Apple puts out new apps and you go, how did they know I needed that? They were studying people's problems, pain points, understanding and interpreting their needs and designing to meet that, okay? So needs, what is it that you need? Now, most people skip this bit. They go straight to ideas. But this first part here is all about you being really thoughtful and thinking about what am I trying to do here with my career? And especially if you're in a job, definitely do this first. If you're out of a job, this is absolutely where you need to start, but you'll probably skip between 1 and 2 quite quickly if you're out of a job because you need to get into action. So we're going to talk about needs, we're going to talk about insights. How do you find insights about yourself that'll give you clues? So each of these exercises, you'll do it and you'll learn something. You won't know until you've done it, what you've learned. And I love working with people on these tools because they get to the end and they go, I didn't think about that. So these tools are designed to give you insights, okay? And that's what you want. You remember when Emily was talking about how can you synthesize different ideas? Well, what is it that you think about things? What is it that you believe about yourself and your capability? What is the narrative that you're telling yourself? Skills mapping is super important. Before you go and do anything, you need to have a really good sense and understanding of your skills. I'm going to show you how to do that. And you need to do some research. You need to understand the marketplace. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Developing things. Yes, you have to develop ideas. I talk a lot about pathways. Decide on the path that you're on before you look for the job. So we're going to talk about what the different pathways are. And we're going to talk about ways to make choices. And then lastly, my partner looked at this and said, why has that man got a baby upside down in his backpack? I was like, no, he's a guy out actively trying to get stuff done. So maybe not such a good image. But anyway, communicate, network, and experiment. There's that prototyping again, okay? The networking that we talked about, get out and talk to people. People hire people they know, like, and trust. Forget recruiters. They're obvious that they will advertise a job, but you will be much better off to go and find a job through your own network and through your own connections. So that's the process that we follow, and these are some of the tools that we use. So number 1, this is the first one, your needs. This is what you have to get your head around. What do you need right now, okay? So there's 8 things on there, and there's probably more, but in the 5 years I've been doing this, if people get clear on these 8 things, they will learn something about where they're headed. Okay, this will help you get on a pathway. So, when do you want to work? You guys have never had a better time to choose how and when you want to work. Where do you want to work? How close to home? I literally worked with a woman who said to me, this is Auckland, right? Traffic problems. She said, I only want to work within 30 minutes of my home. So I got out a map and I drew it on a compass, a circle, and said, anywhere you're going to work is going to be in there. Nowadays, that was 2 years ago. Nowadays, she can work anywhere globally, right? But where do you want to work? How do you want to work? Think about that, because that will determine the type of people you go and approach. Industries. What industries matter and don't matter to you? Sometimes it's easier to make a list of what you don't want to work in. This is like trying to find the ideal partner. People say, oh, what does the guy that you want to meet look like? I go, I don't know, but I definitely know what he doesn't look like, right? So sometimes industries, some people do not want to work in banking. Some people do not want to work in an industry that has an impact on the environment. So scratch things off, right? Decide on what industries matter to you. What's your field of interest? You've only got one life. What kind of industry do you want to work in? Activities, different to jobs. Okay, we've got an activities list that we give out to people. Do you want to be managing stuff? Do you want to be designing stuff? Do you want to be leading? Not everyone wants to be a leader. Why go for a leadership role if you hate leading? What about organizing? What about supporting others? What about the role of being in a service or support industry? So activities lead you to jobs. What are the things that bring you energy and joy? So think about what activities you want to be doing every day. Culture. What kind of culture do you want? Some people absolutely hate collaborative, agile cultures. It does their heads in. Maybe they want to work for something that's quite systematic or structured. And people. Do you want to be working on your own? I think you said you did. Some people get sick of working in teams. Some people need teams. Some people need a sponsor, someone to learn from. I've literally got a friend who is probably making in the hundreds of thousands, and he's about to leave his job. Do you know why? Because he's not learning from anyone. He doesn't have anyone to learn from, so he's plateauing. Outcomes. What's the purpose of your work beyond profit? Do you want to work for a company that is making a lot of money, like a bank maybe, but has no community payback? Do you want to work for a company that is a social enterprise? Are you happy with companies that just make money and have no other impact? Choices to be made, right? I worked for a long time in banks. Then I realized that actually it was hurting my heart, just working for a company that did nothing but make money out of making money for people who already had money. Pretty much what banks do, right? And then your money, your baseline, what you need to earn to maintain your lifestyle. You've got to know your bottom dollar. You've got to know your bottom dollar. And in this market, you've got to know it and you've got to stick to it, but you've got to be prepared. It might be lower than you thought 2 years ago. So do your budgeting and talk to your partner and talk to your family and go, how low can we go here? Beyond this, I'm not going to talk to that person. I'm not going to pursue it. What are your non-negotiables? What doesn't matter to you? So you can turn this into a bit of a hierarchy. You can scorecard this, right? So that's the first thing you've got to do. You've got to start with needs. Number 2. Oh, actually, this is the second one. Number 2. We talked before about purpose. So this is a really great tool on designing your purpose. So imagine you've got a pie and you need to divide it into 3 pieces. Okay, this is out of the Stanford Design Your Life toolbox. I've just adapted it. So purpose in your work comes in 3 ways. Why do we work? What's the purpose of our work? Number 1, we want to get some reward, right? We want to get paid back for our effort. We have to be rewarded. Okay? So how important is reward to you versus impact, the outcome of your effort? What is it that I create? What is it that we as a team are making? How is it that we're contributing to society or the world? And the third is creativity, the ability to use your creative talents. So for some people I meet, it's really important to them that they can be creative, musical, paint, build, technical, whatever it is that they love at work. For other people, it's not. They can be using that just in their personal life. So how important are those 3 things? And how would you divide up your pie? What matters most? What are the trade-offs? If you couldn't have one, would you be happy to have a bit more of the other? So defining your purpose and why you're working. And this will change as you get older. So when I was younger, reward used to be really big for me. It used to be about 50%. Now it's about 15. Because when you run your own business, if you are running your own business purely to make money, you're going to be unhappy a lot of the time, all right? But what you do have in running your own business is a lot of creativity and a lot of impact. Okay, number 3, personality types. Really interesting. Has anyone done this test? Yeah? Okay, cool. Have another look at it. Now that you're thinking about changing your job, there's a really great section in there on, careers and work. We use this on our online platform, Actualize. This is the Myers-Briggs world-famous personality test. You can do it for free online. It's remarkably accurate, and it's very pictorial, very creative. Now, why is this interesting and important, do you think? Knowing what your personality type is. Totally, yeah. And listen, it's not about putting people into boxes, right? But it is very science-based, and it's very there's a lot of data that's gone into it. It's the most used personality test in the world. It does typically reveal to you some things, and you go, oh yes, I am good at that, and you didn't even think that you were good at that. So it's what is your response to a whole bunch of questions, and what does that mean as a strength for you? Why else would we think this is important when we're changing careers? Yeah.
I was going to say, for me, when I did it when I was employed, it really made me look at everyone else and then kind of judge my values. And I started questioning my job and everything like a few months before COVID and everything, going, okay, are my values aligned with this person because this person is a campaigner or something? Like, it just made me kind of look at a lot of like things in my role and my values and stuff.
It's a really good thing to do in a team. If you run a team or you're in a team, it's really fun and playful. And it's not about, I only want to work with people like me. It's about, okay, she's different to me or he's different to me. So how is that going to impact on how we work together? But most importantly, if you work in a culture that's full of people who are all analysts, right, and you're a diplomat person, you got to know that you're going to be different. And maybe you're okay with that. But think about the culture that you're joining. And, if you know your personality type, look for the clues in the people. I always ask people to do these tests when I go and work for them. Funnily enough, I'm an ENFP. I'm a protagonist. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm a campaigner, sorry. Campaigner. Enthusiastic, creative, and sociable, free spirits who always find a reason to smile. There you go. But, a lot of people who I work with, who come to work with me, are actually campaigners as well. Also, protagonists are quite close. So they've colour-coded these, which is a really fun thing to do. So that's number 3. Don't forget, tell me which one you think is the best for you right now. Values. Insights about your values. Similar to personality, but what's the difference between values and your personality type? Anyone know? Values drive your behaviours and your choices. So if you look at that diagram there, you can't read the yellow, which is a bad because it's on a yellow background. But these are boxes of different types of value sets. So people who are into security and tradition and conformity, are quite different people who value stimulation and hedonism and self-direction. So there's actually 4 quadrants and they're kind of opposite. People who value power, social recognition, authority, wealth, probably don't value universalism. So there's some real interesting what your value set is. Again, if you're clear on your values, you'll think about the kind of culture that might share the same values as you. Really good exercise to do, and I can send you that if you're interested in it afterwards. Okay, and now let's talk about skills. So we've got this great exercise which we're going to give you a chance to do later, very soon, on skills. This is a skills stack that we've created which helps you, everybody should do this. This helps you unpack your skills into 3 layers. Okay, because most people I meet can't tell me what they're good at. So we've got this skill stack which has got 2 parts to it. There's 3 layers and then there's a triangle. Let me talk you through this. You need to know what your 3 types of skills are, and everyone has 3 types of skills, right? We have technical skills, your qualifications, your trained skills, the things that you're expert in. And if you don't have any technical training in anything right now, I'd encourage you to get something, because more and more we need to know at least about things like social media or machine-based learning or how to use WordPress, publish a website. Just figure out something that you can get qualified in, because employers are always looking for what's your technical skills. That's kind of the first base to getting a job. But that's not going to be enough, and that stuff gets obsoleted quite quickly. So refresh your technical skills. If you did a marketing degree 10 years ago, do you need to go back and do a new certificate in it if you want to stay in marketing? If it's something you want to keep, if it's a positive skill that you've got, or maybe you're wanting to obsolete it, you don't want to do marketing anymore, what else are you going to train in, right? So think about your technical skills. Think about the things that you're expert in. That gets you in the door, right? But that's not going to be enough to get you a job. What are your business or professional skills? What are the things that you've taught yourself to be good at? What are the things that you've learned on the job through experience? Maybe these are things like negotiation, influencing, bringing diverse groups of people together, negotiating outcomes, training people. Sometimes you teach yourself how to train people, right? You don't necessarily get a certificate in it. So what are the things that you've taught yourself to be good at, and how can you tell a much better story about your business skills? And last but by no means is your soft skills. How do you do things differently to other people with the same business skills and the same technical training? So our marketing manager or a chef, let's take a chef who is actually very good at languages, might be really serious, whereas a chef who's really good at languages, who's very kind and open and funny, very different kind of person, right? So knowing your 3 types of skills and how they combine, and let's take an example. This is a builder who's also got first aid. Okay, those are his technical skills. His business skills that he's taught himself to be good at is developing better processes, profitability of projects, and he's also taught himself to manage teams. And as a human, he's very thoughtful, inclusive, and systematic. So that's an example of someone who's unpacked their 3 types of skills. And then the triangle is, how do you put those 3 things together to come up with what capabilities he could do? So when we triangulate the fact that he's systematic as a human, he's taught himself to be good at profitability, and he's a builder, he's probably ready to be a site manager or a project manager. That's a capability that he has. That's a potential pathway for him that he can't see until he unpacks his 3 types of skills. Because he's systematic, he's also inclusive, so he'd be a good leader, right? So some people can't see that they've got leadership capability until they put their skills together. So that's a really good, that's the skills stack. That's a really good tool. What about causes? Is now the time to evolve your work and work in a new cause? I love this one. So nobody stops and thinks about, like, what am I working in right now? Maybe you guys are in, food is not on there. This is not an exhaustive list, by the way. So we'll probably put food and hospitality in there somewhere. But maybe now's the time to switch. So, what if you were in food and hospitality but you wanted to get into education? Why would you want to get into education? How might you be able to pivot your skills into something in education? It's a pretty easy thought, right? You could go and work for a training. If you've worked in hospitality, but you're really interested in education, you could go and work for one of the wonderful schools out there that are teaching people about hospitality. So how can you switch the cause that you're working in? If you are in business, maybe you've got an interest in the environment. How can you switch your skills over and work in a cause? So maybe I go and work for Greenpeace. I've been a marketing manager in a bank, but I'm I'm suffering by being in a bank because I'm not doing anything for the environment. So how do I switch and go work in a place where it's more aligned to my causes? Okay, so causes, which causes matter most to you, and how can you pivot your skills into something that's in a different area, different industry, that is more aligned to who you are and what you want to do with your life and your time, okay? Research. This is a complicated diagram. Don't worry, you've got it printed out over there if you want to work on this one. This is about taking action and hyper-targeting. I call this a hyper-targeting approach for finding a new opportunity. Remember when you first sat down and I said, go talk to someone and figure out if you've got a connection? This is what I'm talking about. So if you want to find yourself and approach companies, this is a hyper-targeting strategy. So first of all, understand your needs and your capabilities. I've shown you how to do needs. I've shown you how to think about your capabilities. And then think, okay, which sector or industry, we've talked about industries, we've talked about causes, which industries are growing and where do you have a capability match? Okay, so you start as broad as possible. Come up with 10 industries. Come up with 5 to 10 industries if you can. Okay, and then go down to the company's level and say within those, this is all, you can do all of this with research, right? You can find this all out on the interweb. It's amazing how much is publicly available. Which industries are growing that match your capabilities? Step number 2. Which companies in those industries are growing or hiring? How do you find that out? Read the news media. Look at Glassdoor. Has anyone found Glassdoor yet? It's a great, it's kind of like TripAdvisor for companies, where people talk about which companies are good to work for and which ones are hiring, which ones are growing. But which companies are growing, which companies are hiring in that industry? Step number 3, which culture? So you could have 2 companies that could be exactly the same. 2 building companies with completely different values. How do you find out their values? To talk to someone who's worked there before, have a look at their website, think about your values, look at the leaders of those companies and think where have they worked before, what have they done, research how they talk about themselves in the media. So that's step number 3. Do you have an alignment with the culture of those companies? And then really importantly, number 4, do you know anyone there? Connection. Building a connection. People hire people they know, like, and trust. Do you know someone who does know someone there? And remember the courage slide? Ask for help. So I introduce tons of people to people I know all the time. And all I do is I say, hey, I met this person the other day. I met Emma. She's looking to join a company like you. She's got exactly the right capabilities and she's aligned on culture. Would you like to meet her? Yes. Send her in. That's how you fast track getting a job. Tap people you know, or tap people you know who know someone in that company. Build a connection. Then what do you do when you turn up? Remember the slide on meaning about don't go in and ask what you want, go in and say, what can I offer? Melissa introduced me to you, and thanks for taking the meeting. I was really keen to come and talk to you because I think I've got something I could offer your organisation. That's going to get you in the door, not have you got any jobs going. Right? Think about what do you have that's of interest to them? What can you offer them? And now you're ready to make an approach to someone. So that's hyper-targeting, and that's the fastest, most efficient way to get a job. Don't sit back, wait for anything to be advertised. Do not go through recruitment companies if you can avoid them. If you have to, you have to. But for me, I've got nothing against recruitment companies, but I'm all in favour of people activating their own pathway and designing the job that they want, the connection that they want. Okay, so that's hyper-targeting. And, okay, I've got 3 more. Guys, 3 more, and then we're going to do some activities. Pathways, I talked about this in the invite. So different types of pivots, different types of change that you can go on. So, least versus most risk. Most people I meet say to me they want to change their life through their work. And I say, let's find out if you do. Because what we find is actually they don't want to all change. They actually don't want to take too much risk. They just want to adapt what they're doing. Okay? So if you don't want to take too much risk and you are in a job already, identify what's not working or didn't work in the last job you worked in and just try to change that. So it might have been that the team was too big, or the boss was a micromanager, or the company didn't have any money, or the organisation was disorganised. So you don't necessarily have to change everything. The smallest changes and adapt, okay? That's the lowest risk, easiest way to create some change in your life is number 1, is adapt. When you get into the middle bit here, pivoting or portfolio working, which was what I talked about at the beginning, doing multiple jobs at once, as soon as you cross that middle line, you may lose salary security, right? So a classic pivot, there's 3 types of pivots. The same role in a new industry. So say you are a chef and you no longer want to work in a cafe, what could you do? Go work for an events company? Go do private dinners? Start your own home catering business? So you're still being a chef, right? But you're no longer relying on cafes having to employ you. So that's a pivot, right? Second type of pivot is stay in hospitality, but get a new role. So what would be an example in hospitality of the second type of pivot? Maybe you've been a bar staff. Like what do you guys call that? A waiter, a bar operator. What could you do if you wanted to stay in the same industry, but you wanted to get a new role? If you knew a lot about serving drinks and alcohol, you could design cocktails and sell recipes online. You could go and work for a liquor company. You could become a writer. You could do wine tastings. You could host wine tastings. So same role, new industry, same industry, new role. Or the third type of pivot is a lateral move within your own organization. I've done this 3 times. So I went from being a marketing manager to a head of operations. How do you do that? You find someone to sponsor you. You find someone who's happy to back you, to train you, who sees the potential in you because you've told them a good story about your skills and what you want out of your career. So they're going to sponsor that shift. So those are 3 types of pivots. If you cross that line and you get into the other side, you're probably making a choice that salary security is lower on your needs hierarchy that we talked about, right? Portfolio working, contract out to your greatest capability. Running multiple projects. This is the future. Tons of people are doing it. You can sell yourself out to anywhere in the world. And number 5, all train, typically 4 types of big change. You can retrain, you can teach, you can consult, or you can start your own business. That's the highest risk strategy from usually what you're doing today. So those are pathways. And first of all, I'd say to you, decide which path you're on. Decide how much risk you want to take. I would say most of you are probably in the pivot in the room. Some of you are probably on the right-hand side, but I'm guessing as from the little I know about you, most of you are probably thinking about how can I pivot. So you really need to have a really good story about your capabilities. We're nearly there, guys. Ideas. This is a real quick one. I say to people, everyone has at least 3 possible alternative futures. And when I work with people, I try to find 3 things they can do. Everybody has at least 3 things they can do. So we do lots of ideation sessions that look like this with people, all kinds of possibilities, and we group them into things that are risky, safe, or unproven and exciting, and then we get you to decide. Or we do scorecard mapping like this. You can do this with your friends. Once you've decided what pathway you're on, right, I'm going to do a pivot. Have a brainstorming session and generate lots of different ideas for pivots, okay? That's in the second bit, ideation. But this is once you know what your needs are and you know what your causes are and all that kind of stuff. And then lastly, I talked about a new kind of CV. This is in the do column, communicating. Most recruiters, internal or agencies, will spend about 3 to 5 seconds looking at a CV. So you've got to learn to tell them something quickly. And there's some templates over here you guys can take away. This is the new CV that we've designed, which is number 1 in the top right is a little bit of a story. This is about me. On the left, what am I most proud of? Nobody cares what you did for the last 15 years. If they wanted to know that, they'd ask you for it, right? What they care about is what is the stuff that you're most proud of. That's what they always want to hear from you, right? Tell me about tell me about something that you did that you're proud of. Tell me about a time when you did, that classic interview question, right? So tell them in your CV, what are the 5 things you're most proud of, and make these about outcomes. So if you can read the detail in that, it's like I redesigned a global product, and as part of that, I grew the revenue. I established a new brand and took the company public. I restructured a team and generated $2 million in revenue. I developed a new type of program which attracted 20 coaches to support New Zealand. That's not about activities, it's about outcomes. So if you were a chef, maybe you redesigned a new menu that grew the client base. That's what I care about. I don't care about how much revenue, how many people you had in your team, or how long you were there, or, I care about outcomes as an employer. And on the right, how do you create value? So you'll come to this when you do your skills stack. These are your capabilities. These are the things that I can do that creates value for people in New Zealand. I can design, I can connect, I can innovate, I can produce, and I'm a change agent. So those are my capabilities. That's what I tell people. So if the job that you're looking for, you need someone to do one of those 5 things, then I'm right for this role because. So that's about as much as you need to tell an employer, and the more visual you can make it, or the less words you can write. But anyone, whether you're first year out of high school or been in business like me for 30 years, that's what you need to get into the mindset of telling people, is the story that how do you want to create value for yourself. So guys, there's a template for that you can take away. Right, that's the end of the presentation. I hope you're glad to know. Which one of those did you guys find helpful? Let's hear. Shout them out to me. Any of them? Can you remember any of them? Did you write any notes? Which one did you guys find interesting? Pathways, cool. Anyone else? The skills stack? Talk about one, is it?
The research.
The hyper-targeting?
Yeah.
Anyone had anything that wasn't on that list? The connecting? Interesting. Anyone else? Yeah? Oh, generating multiple ideas. The brainstorming one. So you guys can do that at home, right? If you do that needs template and you get a bunch of people together over a few beers or cups of tea, whatever interests you, and you say, listen, here's my needs, here's my skills, right? Here's what I'm trying to get done. I'm trying to do this pivot. Talk to me. Let's generate ideas, and then you figure out ways to scorecard them. Yeah, ask for help. That's what courage is all about, right? So ideas. Anybody else? Okay. Well, guys, I hope that one of those landed with you, and I hope you took pictures. And if you haven't, come and see me afterwards, and you can take some pictures off my screen. But what I've got here for you now is 4 exercises. I picked out the 4 I thought would be, and some of them are on there, not all of them. So I've got 4 tables there. If you want to stay for another half an hour, I've got 4 exercises that you can do right now. Do you remember what I said to you at the beginning? Don't just think, do. I would love you guys to leave here having done something, not just sat here and listen to me prattle on for over an hour. So I've got 4 exercises. The first one is the skills stack. And I'll come and work with you guys. That's at table number 1 just there. I've got some exercises for you. The second one, there's 2 parts to that. There's the unpacking your skills into 3 layers, and then building capability sets, which is a really fun exercise. I'd love to help you with that. The second one is that table there is designing a new kind of CV. I've got some templates for you, and I can help you with that. The third one is the needs analysis. And the needs analysis, as I said to you, I put that up number 1 because I think it's really important that you start with thinking about this. And then the 4th one I picked out for you, that's also got purpose in it, is the hyper-targeting and starting to work on a hyper-targeting plan. And whilst I'm here, I can help you with how do you kind of create that as you go through. So if you guys want to stay, we've got 4 templates on those tables, and that is how we're going to use the rest of the time. If you need to go, thank you for coming. And that discount voucher that you've got there, all of this we've just made accessible online. Our pricing starts at $50 for our discovery planner, where you can do a lot of these tools online. So yeah, encourage your friends if you want to share this with someone else. Everything that I've talked about is on that website, basically.